You take one friggin' little nap and the Leafs move the sun and the moon. Okay, they didn't move the sun and the moon, but getting a first round pick for Kasperi Kapanen is absolutely sick value. Alexander Georgiev, who? Remember that? Remember when everyone was talking about how Kapanen wouldn't even be enough, or Sandin wouldn't even be enough to fetch that backup goalie? Well, the guy who wouldn't be enough to fetch the backup goalie just fetched a first round pick. Okay, so these are the full details of the trade, and the first round pick is from 2020, and the Maple Leafs will also be receiving a prospect in Filip Hallander and defenseman David Warsofsky, but also Evan Rodriguez, who I think is a little bit more interesting than a lot of people want to give him credit for. So it's the 15th overall pick for a prospect, a maybe kind of forward, and a contract to balance it out for Kasperi Kapanen, Jesper Lindgren, who's just kind of a middling prospect in the Maple Leaf system. He's a right-handed defenseman from Sweden who didn't really play a whole lot on the Toronto Marlies last season, who are absolutely terrible anyway, and Pontus Aberg, who I believe signed a contract in the KHL anyway. Dom Lucian going on to say here, Kapanen is only 23, but he's probably not a guy you trade a first-round pick for, especially not after his last season. And that is true. Kapanen was awarded with a $3.2 million contract per season for 3 years coming into this year, and he had a disappointing year. In the previous year, he scored 20 goals, and he showed some flash and showed some promise with his speed and his penalty-killing ability, but he never took a step forward. In fact, he actually showed signs of regression, because when he played in the top six with John Tavares and Mitch Marner, or on that wing, when he's tried to play on his off wing even, it never clicked. It never clicked with him, and I don't know if it ever will. But Dom going on to say here, in game score value added, the 15th overall pick is historically worth 4.9 wins over a player's first 7 seasons, which is 1.9 more than Kapanen is projected to provide. That feels uncommon for a futures trade. Say what you want about Scott Wheeler for The Athletic here, but he does watch and write about a lot of these prospects, so his opinion does carry some kind of weight. So if he's putting Hallander in those kind of graces with guys like Samuel Girard and Travis Konecny and Anthony Mantha, then that says something about this prospect. Not to mention that we're already getting a first-round pick, the 15th overall pick. This isn't a late first-round pick in an absolutely stacked draft year. We're also clearing off Kasperi Kapanen's entire cap hit and not taking back any contracts. I will touch on Evan Rodriguez in a second here, but for more on Filip Hallander, let's go, or Hallander, I apologize to my Swedish friends if I'm saying that incorrectly, but he just turned 20 years old in late June. I mean, people are projecting him as kind of a power forward-like, and he's 6'1", 190 pounds, might be able to fill out a little bit more there. He was a second round pick just 2 seasons ago, like we mentioned, and he was the second or third ranked prospect in the Pittsburgh system, and that's not really saying a whole ton because they just traded away guys like Kalen Addison at this year's trade deadline in the Jason Zucker trade, so their prospect system is a little bit depleted because GM Jim Rutherford just pulls off trades like this all the time, but we're going to see here, as a 19-year-old pretty much for the entire season, he put up 14 points in 27 SHL games. And if we're looking at a comparable player here, why not look at Andreas Johnsson, because he's the guy that came over from the SHL over to North America here in the 12-13 season. This was his numbers in the Swedish Junior League. He only actually played 7 games and put up 1 goal as a 19-year-old in the Swedish Hockey League, but the season afterwards, he had 24 points in 44 games. And when we're looking at the points per game here, that is Andreas Johnsson's 20-year-old season in the Swedish Hockey League compared to Filip Hallander's 19-year-old season in the Swedish Hockey League. Pretty similar here, and we know what kind of player Andreas Johnsson is right now. Now, Evan Rodriguez, to me, is a little bit interesting here because he's 27 years old. He's a winger, centerman, kind of whatever you kind of view him. He's a smaller player, 5'11", 184 pounds. He's Canadian, if that means anything to you, but he made $2 million this past season, and he's going to be a restricted free agent. I don't necessarily think that the Toronto Maple Leafs will qualify this player for $2 million. I think that that's a little bit too expensive, but if there is a deal to be worked out with Evan Rodriguez, I am definitely interested in retaining his services. If we're looking at Evan Rodriguez compared to Kasperi Kapanen here, I mean, he didn't have the greatest year with Buffalo and Pittsburgh. It looks like there was some injuries there as well, but just the season before that was awesome for him. He was able to contribute a little bit defensively, and he was a useful player that could play in your bottom 6. Even the year before that, in the 17-18 season, playing for the Buffalo Sabres, again, he was a player that is useful. He could play in your bottom 6 and be decent. If we're not looking at the fancy stats and we're just looking at the regular old numbers here, 29 points in 74 games the season before that, 25 points in 48 games the year before that with the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, if he could be that type of player for the Toronto Maple Leafs, I would happily have him in my bottom 6. Looking at this trade, a nice little neat graphic here, what this really looks to me is selling high on a player who had a very underwhelming season. So the fact that Kyle Dubas was able to pull that off is absolutely amazing here. This is just step 1, right? This is step 1 into redemption here. Let's see what Kyle Dubas does with that first round pick. Let's see what he does with Evan Rodriguez. Let's see what he does with Philip Hollander if he brings him over to the Toronto Marlies next season, if the American Hockey League is even going to be a thing next year, because remember, the NHL is still talking about playing out of host cities and bubbles for the next season. Let's see what Kyle Dubas is able to do with $3.2 million more in cap space. That sure does look like enough money to go out there and get a UFA defenseman. Going into this offseason, Kyle Dubas needed to be able to win trades, and people's confidence in that wasn't very high. And you could cite the Marleau deal, and you could cite the Kadri deal, but if you're looking at this deal, Kyle Dubas wins this trade because even the people that hate him are able to admit that he's kick-ass at drafting players, so you just know he's going to do something awesome with that 15th overall pick. And again, an absolutely stacked draft. That is not just the first round pick from any old season. This is one of the best drafts, or it's projected to be one of the deepest drafts in like 3 or 4 years. If you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, today was a good day, but we need to have more of these. So hopefully we can have more of these. Hopefully Kyle Dubas can continue to pull off things like this and redeem himself, because Pittsburgh fans aren't too happy with this deal. I'll let you know that. But make sure to like the video if you did like it. Subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And guys, remember, this offseason's going to be a hell of a lot of fun.